Go Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Y'all Mean of Revolution, and revolution is in the air. Iran now backs Captain Ibrahim Traor'e against the U.S. and the West. Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Well, this revolutionary situation is getting real big. Everybody is standing with this brother. We know North Korea. We know now Iran is there letting the world know they won't allow this brother to be assassinated.
In a world filled with noise, silence can speak volumes. And today, as one of Africa's most fearless young leaders, Captain Ibrahim Traor'e faces mounting threats from imperialist forces. The loudest voice of support hasn't come from Africa's own presidents. It hasn't come from the African Union. It has come from halfway across the world, from Iran. President Massoud Pezeshkian called Traor'e a blessing for Burkina Faso, for Africa, and for the world. He warned that the same forces who once overthrew Sankara now seek to destroy this new flame of resistance. But while Iran speaks with clarity and courage, Africa's own leaders have chosen silence. The question we ask today is simple and painful. Why are others standing with Traor'e, but not us? In his official statement, President Pezeshkian didn't mince words. He described Traor'e as a beacon of hope, a revolutionary force, and a man whose life must be protected at all costs. His tone was direct. He accused the very imperialist governments that fund terrorism in the Sahel of using that same terrorism to justify military control. This isn't conspiracy. It's historical pattern. We've seen it in Libya. We've seen it in Mali. We've seen it in the coups that conveniently remove leaders who dare to say no to the West. Iran's message didn't just honor Traor'e. It exposed the global game, and it sided with African sovereignty. But perhaps more shocking than Iran's boldness was Africa's deafening silence in response. The African Union was created to unite, protect, and amplify the voices of African nations. But in moments of true crisis, when revolutionary leaders like Traor'e are targeted, what do we hear from the AU? Nothing. No public statements, no calls for protection, no show of support. For many, this is not surprising. The AU has often been criticized as a symbolic body with little backbone, more interested in maintaining elite power structures than defending the interests of the people. But the people are watching, and they are no longer content with diplomatic silence, while our most courageous sons are put in the crosshairs. The warning from Iran wasn't just political, it was spiritual. The name Thomas Sankara echoes through this moment. Sankara, the revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso in the 1980s, dared to reject imperialism, refused foreign aid with strings, and called for African self-reliance. He was assassinated in 1987, a crime widely believed to be enabled by both internal betrayal and foreign orchestration. Today, many see Ibrahim Traor'e as Sankara reborn, in spirit, in courage, and in vision. Iran's message didn't just praise Traor'e, it warned, do not let what happened to Sankara happen again. This is not just a political battle. It is a generational test. Will we repeat the mistakes of the past, or will we learn and act? To understand the silence of African presidents, we must understand the system they operate in. Many are beholden to foreign debt, foreign military alliances, and aid programs that come with invisible chains. Speaking in defense of someone like Traor'e, who rejects those systems, risks their own position in the global order. There is also fear. Fear of being labeled anti-Western, fear of sanctions, fear of political instability. And perhaps for some, there is complicity. Some leaders do not want the revolutionary fire that Traor'e represents to spread to their countries. But leadership is not about comfort. It's about courage. And in moments like this, silence is complicity. Why would Iran, a non-African country, show such strong support for an African leader? The answer lies in shared resistance. Iran, like many nations outside the Western power bloc, has faced decades of sanctions, regime change attempts, and global media vilification. It understands the playbook of empire, and it recognizes the patterns. Iran's solidarity is not just political, it's symbolic. It challenges the narrative that only the West speaks for humanity. It shows that Africa has allies beyond the usual suspects.
That's right.
Allies who will stand with revolutionary leaders, even when it's unpopular. Whether we agree with Iran's policies or not, one thing is clear. They had the courage to speak. Across Africa, citizens are no longer waiting for permission to care. They see Traorè's mission, they feel Sankara's legacy, and they know the cost of silence. From Accra to Johannesburg, from Dakar to Kinshasa, a fire is rising. Social media is flooded with messages of support. Grassroots movements are calling for unity, and independent platforms like Make Africa Great are becoming the voice that institutes.
This revolutionary energy that's in the air, we're going to harness that and, continue the liberation struggle. This cannot be put out. It's nothing, no government, nobody will be able to do. This is divine energy. The ancestors is rising up. What's going on with our brother Traor'e? This is a good thing because it gives up opportunity. Those of us here who are saying that we are descendants of slaves here, we are FBA, we B1, but we have nothing but respect for our Pan-African brothers and sisters. We can say we are indigenous. We have nothing but love for our Caribbean brothers and sisters. We have nothing but love for revolution. I've been preaching this gospel forever. For all of our revolutionaries all over the country, China, North Korea, Venezuela, the real revolutionaries of Syria, not Al-Qaeda, we locking arms with revolutionary Yemenis. You see, I can go to any one of these places. They know my message. We standing firm. We ain't no Johnny come latelys to revolution. See, I knew what Iran would do. Some revolutionary over here say, "Oh, the hell with Iran." You see, can't be listening to these local jokers who don't know shit. They will have y'all, and remember this, I'm dead fucking serious about this because I've been saying this. They will have y'all with no fucking allies. Listen to some of these phonies over here pretend like they're revolutionaries. They would tell you don't give a damn about nothing going on nowhere on the planet. That's how your ass get cornered, and then the U.S. will finish you off. No, we have allies all over this goddamn globe. That's why I've been preaching that Putin is a righteous revolutionary. When there was people on the internet talking about what the hell is Putin done for us, I told them bastards. They know nothing about the Russians sending their navy to block the ports during the Civil War. When France and Britain and those same, that NATO, just let's say NATO, when NATO was helping the South rise again, Russia was blocking the ports. I brought that to motherfucking YouTube. They house niggas knew nothing. They act like they didn't remember who defeated the Nazis. They thought it was the U.S. I've been preaching. I tell you, Russia beat 70% of the Nazis they goddamn self. But these house niggas tell you, what did they give a damn about us? Russia helped every black liberation struggle that there was in the 60s. These house niggas will tell you, well, Russia don't care about us. Don't listen to these clowns. They know nothing. So now revolution is in the air. Revolutionaries going to lead the way. Iran is a revolutionary nation. They standing firm with our revolutionary brother, Ibrahim Traor'e, while a bunch of African nations not saying shit. But guess what? They looking at us over here. They saying, damn, Black America's rising up. Yeah, we revolutionary. Yes, we doing something different over here at the moment, getting ourselves together, but we for global revolution. They won't be killing any revolutionaries, targeting any revolutionaries on our watch. Are you crazy?
Institutions refuse to be. If presidents won't protect our revolutionaries, the people must. If the African Union stays silent, the African spirit must speak louder. Captain Ibrahim is not just a man. He is a symbol of a continent waking up. He represents what happens when Africa stops asking for permission and starts taking back power. But symbols can be destroyed, just as Sankara was, just as Lumumba was. That is why this moment matters. Iran spoke. Africa listened. Now it is time to respond, not with silence, not with fear, but with unity, clarity, and purpose. The world is watching. Will we protect our own, or will we lose another giant to history? Subscribe to Make Africa Great. This is your voice. This is our time.
Wow, while Africans and the world in general still waiting to hear from African leader, African Union solidarity message to the people of Burkina Faso, to Captain Ibrahim Traor'e, the president of Iran, has broken the silence and share a solidarity message to the people of Burkina Faso and Captain Ibrahim Traor'e. As you heard, dear lovely family, friends, fellow Africans, Captain Ibrahim Traor'e is not for Africans only, is for the entire world, to all people who want and seek justice. Captain Ibrahim Traor'e is not against white people. Captain Ibrahim Traor'e is against exploitation of African resources. Captain Ibrahim Traor'e is against imperialism. So don't confuse the things that maybe Captain Ibrahim Traor'e is against white people or against Europeans or against Americans. No, Captain Ibrahim Traor'e is against exploitation, neocolonialism, and imperialism. And that's why the entire world, all people that seek justice and that love justice, all of them are with Captain Ibrahim Traor'e. But one thing that Africans are being disappointed is from our leaders. And this is expressing how we are so divided. And that's why kings and queens, ladies and gentlemen, have been sharing my thought and my suggestion that after this rally of Captain Ibrahim, supporting Captain Ibrahim Traor'e, supporting liberation, we need to have our own rally as Africans to demand a united Africa. Because you see, till today, you didn't hear anything from African Union. And we expected African Union to be a tool that is uniting Africans. So if you are continental body that you own these small states or small nations, it means if anything happened to Burkina Faso, you have to say something as a father, as an organization or continental organization. If something happened to Libya, you have to say something. If something happened to DRC, you have to say something. You have to do something. And that's why we are saying we want a united Africa. African Union is not enough to unite Africans. Maybe it will remain as an organization that is uniting political leaders. Let us continue with African Union as an organization or as a political organization where Africans, politicians are coming together. But when we want to move far from politics, we need to have our own revolutionary organization, a united Africa. So, fellow Africans, brothers and sisters in the continent, in the diaspora, we still have a way to go. We are still have something to do. We need to make sure that we attain united Africa. Because, as I said, as you heard, that still now, no African leaders have been showing solidarity. I'm talking about those political leaders, whether from South Africa, whether from Zambia or Zimbabwe. We want, when something happened to Zimbabwe, we want all African leaders to stood up to say something. The way we have seen European nation when they came together, when Russia attacked Ukraine, all of us, we saw Russia was under sanctions. Some properties of Russia was seized. People tried to cut ties with Russia. Russia was prohibited to participate in World Cup. I think all of us will remember. So we want the same spirit that Europeans has, white people has. We want the same spirit to come to Africans. But Africans, when it comes to defend each other, that's where you find that we are under big division. And to prove that, recently you remember what happened to Libya. How Africans kept silent when Gaddafi was assassinated. And right now is what is happening. Maybe there are those who have jealous Maybe if they saw maybe Captain Ibrahim Traoré being praised by young people, they feel jealous. And I know one thing that our political leaders fear. They fear that maybe if they can support Captain Ibrahim Traoré, they were supporting coup. So they're trying to isolate themselves from Captain Ibrahim Traoré so that they can look like they're not supporting coup leaders or military leaders. They want democratic leaders. But what kind of democracy you are talking about while you see people in your nation suffering? People in Congo are suffering. People in Sudan are suffering. And yet you are in your country enjoying democracy. Democracy must spread all over the continent. We are Africans. These borders that you see right now we have, those borders are drawn by white people. So you are preserving the interest of white people. And that's why we are still keeping silent. Why? Because if you are a Ghanaian, you feel I'm a Ghanaian. You are preserving the territory designed by white people that you are a Ghanaian, you are not African. If you are a Kenyan, you are saying I'm a Kenyan. I'm not an African. I prefer to be most Kenyan than African. So kings and queens, we need to change. Just imagine if Iran, Russia, China, and many other nations are supporting Captain Ibrahim Traoré. What makes us not supporting our hero? We have seen Africans around the globe came together, united. You have seen Africans in Washington, Africans in London, Africans in Vienna, Austria, Africans in Canada, Africans all over the world came together in Caribbean, in Jamaica, came together, say we are defending our hero. We should not allow what happened to Sankara to happen to this young man, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. But under our watch, our leaders are still keeping silent. You know, if you think these things will end to Captain Ibrahim Traoré, you are lying yourself. It is not just Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Listen to all of us. We had the issue of South Africa and America. You see, it is not about Captain Ibrahim Traoré. You may ask yourself, why South Africa right now has been shaken and shocked by Trump when they try to touch the land, their own land. All of us, we remember what Trump said. And of course, in this platform, we have shared what Trump said, that there's a grabbing of the land in South Africa. But is it true there's white genocide in South Africa? Is it true there's white genocide in South Africa? Those are just words trying to propagate so that if they want to punish South Africa, they have a reason. They find reasons to punish someone.
Yeah.
So don't think that you are safe. Look what happened to Zimbabwe. All of us, we are witness. Zimbabwe was under sanction. Right now, a young Zimbabwean who have the age of 20 still affected by sanction, but he know nothing or she know nothing about what happened before. But because Zimbabwe under Mugabe decided to take the land back to the rightful owners who are Africans, black people from white farmers, it looks like that was a sin. That, yes, you are taking your land, we are going to punish you. You are not going to sell anything. You are not going to do anything. You are not going to access financial institutions. And that's why today, if you go to Zimbabwe, you find many Zimbabweans are moving to South Africa. Why? Because economy in Zimbabwe were destroyed. And we must know that even Burkina Faso, they will come to Burkina Faso. They have started by using people who looks like us. They use General Langley to propagate, to speak something that is not true, that Captain Ibrahim Traoré is using gold reserve revenue to protect himself. While we Africans, we see things happening in Burkina Faso. If you want to prove, go to Burkina Faso. Roads are being built. Roads are under constructions. We see changes. Schools are being built. Classes are under construction. Hospitals are under constructions. Everything is under construction. Industries, we have seen inauguration of several industries in Burkina Faso. Minerals are being processed in Burkina Faso. Gold right now are being produced. Gold bars are being produced in Burkina Faso. Captain Ibrahim Traor'e bought agricultural equipment. Right now, the people of Burkina Faso are feeding themselves. If you talk about construction, right now the people of Burkina Faso are constructing their own roads. And this issue will be the next day. I will come and share about what Captain Ibrahim Traor'e has done on the issue of construction. And of course, I've been sharing this issue many times, that Captain Ibrahim Traor'e took almost 1,500 young people to China to acquire knowledge of road construction. And then Captain Traor'e bought equipment. And now those young men and women have already returned to Burkina Faso, and they have given those tools, equipment to construct their roads. If you construct poor road, you are going to suffer yourself. You are not going to blame the Chinese or the Europeans. So that's what Captain Ibrahim Traor'e is doing. So, dear lovely family, friends, fellow Africans, we need to support our hero. It is not fair and it is not good to see that others are those who are supporting Captain Ibrahim Traor'e. We Africans who are here, we are keeping silent. But you find others who are outside there. Iran, Russia, Caribbean nations. We who are in the continent, we are still silent. Our regional bodies are still silent. When we unite and speak with one voice, and yet it's the same people who are telling us we need unity. You know, one thing that our leaders must understand, this generation is totally different generation. This is a new generation that has a lot of things, that have a lot of questions. They need answers. And that's why I'm saying these political leaders, if they're not delivering, they're going to be voted out, whether through ballot or through guns. What the people of Africa right now need, it's not politics. The people of Africa want food on the table. The people of Africa want good roads, want health care. If we have such kind of leader, it's okay for him or her to stay in power, even for 400 years, if it is possible. If the same, you see the Chinese, the way they have done Chinese, they have decided Xi Jinping to become a president forever. Not because Xi Jinping is maybe forced to become, no. Because they see something different to Xi Jinping. So even we Africans, we need to find leaders who is delivering, leaders who have the spirit of Pan-Africanism, who can bring Africans together, who can deliver services, not just services, based in the quality services to the people. We don't want to see our leaders telling us about free education while they're not taking their children or their relative to those schools. We don't want to hear our leaders telling us about improving healthcare while they are not treated in these hospitals. We want all of us to be treated in these hospitals so that we can trust you. We are not a guinea pig where people are coming and testing their drugs and their things on our bodies. We want all of us Africans to improve our healthcare, to improve our education systems. We need to educate our people, to tell our people that through this gold you can do this and this. Maybe through this uranium you can generate electricity. You can create protective weapon. We want Africans to be educated well, to know what they can benefit from our natural resources. So, kings and queens, ladies and gentlemen, let us not speak for too long, but it is paining. It is paining to see others are those who are supporting Captain Ibrahim Traor'e, while we who are here in the continent of Africa, we are keeping silent. So we need to break this chain of division. We need to come together. We need to unite. We need to show solidarity. These things is not for
This issue of Burkina Faso and Captain Ibrahim Traore has suddenly become one of the biggest political issues in the world, trending regularly on social media. My own interview with our dear friend and guest, Nico House, on this very subject, literally on this exact subject, is one of our biggest, most viewed clips in all the history of the mother of all talk shows. It's in the millions. Millions of people have watched it on all platforms, including pirates by the dozen going out on TikTok, which is now a pretty regular thing. We're not always able to keep track of them in order to count them and claim the credit for them. But I can say that millions have watched what Nico House said and what I said about Captain Traor'e. It's even worse than you said, Amy. He didn't just accuse Captain Ibrahim of stealing Burkina Faso's gold. He accused him of stealing Burkina Faso's gold to pay for his own protection. Well, I wonder why he would need protection. Well, one of the obvious reasons is that both France and the United States are quite clearly committed to killing him. What is it about Captain Traor'e that they want to kill? Well, in addition to the great strides forward that you have adumbrated, this very week, the Burkina Faso government abolished all education fees. It is now free to go to nursery, primary, secondary, and university in Burkina Faso. What's not to love about that? Traor'e has nationalized the building of the country's roads when he discovered that the private French companies that were hitherto building the roads were charging up to 100 times more for the building of those roads than the government of Burkina Faso itself can do. And so he's brought it in-house. There's now a public works department in Burkina Faso, in Ouagadougou, which will henceforth pave and lay roads across the whole country.
The solution is not to take Africans and move them to Europe. The solution is to free Africa from certain Europeans who exploit it and allow these people to live off what they have. This is called the CFA franc, a colonial currency that France prints for 14 African nations, and by virtue of which it exploits the resources of this nation. This is a child working in a gold mine in Burkina Faso Burkina Faso is one of the poorest nations in the world. For Burkina Faso, which has gold, France prints colonial currency. In return, it demands that 50% of everything Burkina Faso exports ends up in the coffers of the French treasury. The gold that this child crawls into a tunnel to extract mostly ends up in the coffers of the French state. So
what if I told you that a 34-year-old military captain with no economic degree took over one of the poorest countries in Africa and in just 2 years increased its GDP by over 17%, paid off national debts and launched the biggest infrastructure revolution in the country's history? And what if I told you that he did all this while refusing the presidential salary, rejecting IMF loans, and telling Western powers to back off? This isn't a fairy tale. It's the story of Ibrahim Traor'e of Burkina Faso, and it might just be the most important leadership case study in Africa today. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Strategic Lens, where we go beyond the headlines to understand the real power dynamics that are shaping our world. An old African proverb says, when the music changes, so does the dance. For decades, the economic music in Africa has been composed by Western powers through the IMF and the World Bank, forcing African nations to dance to their tune. But in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traor'e has changed the music entirely. Today, I'm going to break down how this young leader is creating a revolutionary economic blueprint that challenges everything we have been taught about development in Africa. What do you think would happen if more African countries follow Traor'e's model? Think about it as we explore his strategy. To understand why Traor'e's approach is so revolutionary, we need to understand what he is fighting against. Since the 1980s, African countries facing economic difficulties have been offered a deal by the IMF and World Bank. Take our loans, but follow our structural adjustment programs known as SAP. These SAPs promised economic growth and follow a simple formula. 1. Cut government spending on public services. 2. Privatize state-owned enterprises. 3. Open markets to foreign competition. And 4. Focus on exporting raw materials. SAPs created what I call the colonial economy 2.0, keeping African nations dependent on foreign loans, selling raw materials at low prices, buying back finished goods at high prices, and trapped in circles of debt and poverty. But what if there was another way? What if an African country could break free from this cycle? How many African countries do you think have successfully escaped the SAP trap in the last 40 years? The answer might shock you. Ibrahim Traor'e didn't rise through elite economic institutions. He was a military captain who took power in 2022 when Burkina Faso was facing multiple crises. When offered the presidential salary of $76,000 a year, a fortune in Burkina Faso, Traor'e refused it, keeping only his captain's salary of $583 per month. Now, this wasn't just a symbolic gesture. It signaled his entire philosophy: leadership through service, not extraction. The philosophy that drives the 4 revolutionary economic strategies that we are about to explore. And speaking about service to one's country, there is nothing more fundamental to a nation's wealth than controlling its own resources. Which brings us to Traor'e's first revolutionary move. For decades, the structural development programs imposed by the IMF have pushed African countries to privatize natural resources, allowing foreign companies to extract wealth while leaving little behind. In Burkina Faso, gold accounts for about 80% of export earnings. But before Traor'e, most of this gold left the country unrefined, with profits flowing to foreign companies. Traorè's solution was bold. 1. Nationalize gold mines. 2. Build Burkina Faso's first national gold refinery that processes 150 tons annually. And 3. Stop the export of unrefined gold. The results? More jobs, more value, more revenue staying in Burkina Faso. But then, controlling your resources is just the first step. What Traoré did next sent shockwaves through international financial institutions and challenged decades of economic orthodoxy. Stay with me to discover how a young captain from one of the world's poorest countries dared to say no to the most powerful financial institutions on the planet. Traoré's next move was even more audacious, targeting the very foundation of the Western economic model in Africa. Traoré rejected loans from the IMF and the World Bank, a move that shocked Western economists. But he understood something fundamental. These loans came with conditions that undermined sovereignty and perpetuated dependency. Think of it like this. If someone helps you build a house and demand that you must let them live in it and dictate what furniture you must buy and who can visit, is that really help or control? Instead, Ibrahim Traoré focused on self-reliance through resource management, cutting wasteful government spending, and preventing capital flight through corruption. The results speak for themselves. In just 2 years, the GDP of Burkina Faso increased from $18.8 billion to $22 billion while paying off debts. But financial independence alone doesn't build a nation. You need something much more tangible, something you can literally drive on. And this is where Traoré's genius really shines. But here is the shocking fact. From independence to the time Ibrahim Traoré took power, Burkina Faso had just 3,000 kilometers of paved roads. When Ibrahim Traoré first approached private companies about building new roads for the country, he discovered something outrageous. Their prices were astronomical, far higher than what the same work cost in developed countries. So what did Traoré do? Something no one expected. The first is that he purchased over 900 pieces of construction equipment, a procurement so massive that when the convoy passed through neighboring Ghana, people lined the streets in amazement. Secondly, he launched a nationwide program to train thousands of Burkinabe youth to operate this equipment. And third, he set an ambitious goal to build 3,000 to 5,000 kilometers of paved roads every year. Let that sink in. What took decades, he's now doing it annually at the fraction of what neighboring countries pay. Farmers can bring produce to market without spoilage. Children can access schools more easily. Healthcare become more accessible, and new businesses emerge along transport routes. But roads and gold are just part of the story. The true genius of Traoré's model lies in what happens next. A complete reimagination of what African development can look like. And it starts with the most basic human need of all. The structural development programs typically pushed African countries to focus on cash crops for export, creating nations that grow what they don't eat and eat what they don't grow. Traoré flipped these nations by 1. Distributing tractors and seeds to local farmers. 2. Building processing plants for crops like cotton and tomatoes. And 3. Investing in local food production to reduce import dependency. When people can feed themselves, they have achieved the most fundamental form of sovereignty. And Burkina Faso is steadily moving towards that goal. But Traoré understood that true independence requires more than economic transformation. It requires psychological liberation. In a powerful symbolic move, he banned British and French colonial wigs and gowns in courts, replacing them with traditional Burkinabe attire made from locally woven Faso Danfani fabric. Now, this wasn't just about clothing. It was about supporting local artisans and industries and breaking colonial mindsets that assume foreign is better. Economic development isn't just about GDP figures. It's about who owns, controls, and benefits from that growth. And of course, no revolution comes without challenges. And Traoré's bold model for African development faces significant hurdles, both internally and from powerful external forces that prefer the status quo. Now, let's be clear. Burkina Faso faces enormous challenges: security threats, institutional development needs, and international pressure. And Traoré's model isn't without risk. Nationalized industries must avoid inefficiencies. Technical partnerships are still needed. Regional alliances must be strengthened. But what makes his approach revolutionary is that it offers a path to development centered on sovereignty and a model that prioritizes the welfare of citizens over foreign interests. So what can other African leaders learn from the Traoré playbook? The first thing is that they should prioritize local solutions, invest in equipment and training rather than outsourcing. Control your resources, ensure your country captures the full value of your natural resources. Then question foreign help and also lead by example. Cut waste and demonstrate personal integrity. The most important lesson might be this: Africa has the resources, the talent, the capability to develop on its own terms. What's often lacking isn't capacity, but courage. As we move towards the end of this analysis of Ibrahim Traoré's revolutionary approach, let's reflect on what his example means not just to Burkina Faso, but for Africa and the entire global South. Ibrahim's approach is not just a model, it's a declaration of possibility. And this reminds us of another African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Traoré is showing that African nations can go both fast and far when they trust their own people and prioritize their own interests. In a world where we are told that there is no alternative to the dominant economic system, Ibrahim Traoré is proving that alternatives do not only exist, they thrive. Thank you for joining me on this exploration. If you found this analysis valuable, share this
In a revelation that stunned the world, Russia uncovered a massive oil reserve estimated at 50 billion barrels beneath a nation in Africa that few ever associated with fossil fuel wealth. The question on everyone's mind now is, what is Russia doing there? Which country is involved? And what could this mean for the African continent as a whole?
Let's take a closer look. Located in the heart of the Sahel, where sun-scorched landscapes stretch into the horizon and the soil cracks beneath relentless heat, Burkina Faso was never imagined as an oil-rich territory. Its identity has long been tied to cotton production rather than crude oil. Stories of wealth from petroleum seemed far-fetched here. There were no bustling oil ports, no famed drilling operations, and no legacy of energy empires. However, in early 2025, this perception was shattered. Beneath decades of dust and neglect, a monumental discovery was made, an oil reserve so enormous that it rewrote the narrative of Burkina Faso overnight. It was hidden beneath the very terrain that multinational companies had written off for generations. Global energy giants such as ExxonMobil, Shell, and Total Energies had long overlooked Burkina Faso. Their focus remained on proven petroleum hubs like Nigeria, Algeria, and Angola. The West African nation was viewed as too dry, too politically unstable, and too remote to be of strategic value, especially since it lacked direct access to the sea, making transportation of oil extremely difficult and costly. As a result, exploration efforts were minimal. The perceived instability and lack of infrastructure discouraged investment. But unbeknownst to the world, a vast oil kingdom lay beneath the soil, untapped and ignored. The discovery didn't start in Burkina Faso, though. It began thousands of miles away in Moscow. Faced with increasing international sanctions, Russia pivoted its strategy toward expanding influence through non-military means. Rather than relying solely on force, the Kremlin adopted a subtler long-term approach involving technology, engineering, and resource extraction. Africa became a prime target in this new geopolitical campaign, and energy was Russia's key instrument. Backed by government support and rich in political motivation, Gazprom, Russia's state-controlled energy giant, turned its attention to areas other companies had disregarded. Burkina Faso offered the perfect scenario for Russia's ambitions. Estranged from Western powers, resistant to International Monetary Fund, IMF, conditions, and led by a government actively seeking new alliances, the country welcomed Russia's involvement. Under the leadership of President Ibrahim Traor'e, the Burkinabe government viewed Russian collaboration not just as a tactical partnership, but as an opportunity to shape a new national identity. Beginning in 2023, Russian geologists and engineers from Gazprom commenced detailed exploration in northern Burkina Faso. Employing sophisticated seismic imaging and satellite-assisted surveys, they scanned landscapes once dismissed as barren. What others had overlooked, Gazprom detected: indications of rich hydrocarbon deposits buried beneath ancient geological formations. Their work was quiet and deliberate. There were no major announcements, no press coverage, just patient drilling and data analysis. Then, in the opening weeks of 2025, their findings were confirmed. The results revealed not just a marginal oil field, but a truly massive deposit minus 50 billion barrels of crude oil, enough to transform the country's economic fate. Even more impressive than the size of the reserve was the type of oil discovered. Analysts described it as light and sweet crude, highly valued in the global market for its ease of refinement into fuel and other petroleum products. This finding elevated the discovery from significant to extraordinary. What puzzled many, however, was how such a vast reserve ended up in a landlocked region with no prior oil history. According to geologists, the explanation may lie in ancient history. During the Paleozoic and Mesozoic periods, much of West Africa, including modern-day Burkina Faso, was submerged under a vast inland sea. This sea accumulated dense organic matter, buried in low-oxygen environments, ideal conditions for oil formation. Over millions of years, sediment layered and sealed these hydrocarbons deep underground. Unlike other regions plagued by tectonic shifts or seismic activity, Burkina Faso's relative geological stability preserved the deposits, essentially locking them away in time. So why had this treasure remained undiscovered for so long? The truth is, very few had seriously investigated the possibility. The technological tools needed to detect these deep, subtle anomalies weren't available or deployed by earlier companies. Those who did attempt exploration relied on outdated data and faced daunting logistical challenges. For companies from the West, a landlocked nation like Burkina Faso was economically unappealing. Developing the infrastructure to extract and export the oil, pipelines, refineries, and road networks seemed like an insurmountable task. But Russia saw what others didn't. And now, the landscape of African energy politics may never be the same. For Gazprom, the challenges that might deter other companies were no obstacle. Backed by the strategic ambitions of the Russian state, this move into Burkina Faso was more than a business venture. It was a calculated geopolitical investment designed for the long haul. Now that the oil discovery has been verified and early-stage development and extraction plans are in motion, the potential consequences are enormous. At current market prices, this single oil reserve could generate an astonishing $3 trillion in long-term revenue. But unlike previous oil booms in Africa, this one isn't being managed by a coalition of Western oil conglomerates, nor is it overseen by international financial institutions like the IMF. Instead, it's being led by a sanctioned Eurasian power in direct collaboration with a military-led African government that has publicly rejected the legacies of colonial oversight and foreign-imposed governance. Together, they are laying the groundwork for an alternative model, one that challenges long-established norms of global energy control. In today's world, where access to energy translates into political influence and economic leverage, this discovery is more than just about oil. It signals a fundamental power shift, a new chapter in which Western dominance in African resource politics is rapidly diminishing. The ripple effects could lead to major realignments, both regionally and globally. And yet, for all the drama surrounding the announcement, the oil has not yet begun to flow. Burkina Faso's leadership, particularly under President Ibrahim Traor'e, has pledged that this newfound wealth will not become another case of stolen dreams or external exploitation. Officials insist that this oil will be used to uplift the nation, building infrastructure, cities, and public services, rather than just enriching elites or foreign investors. But history cautions us. Promises of transformation through oil wealth have echoed before, in Venezuela, Angola, Iraq, only to end in corruption, inequality, and turmoil. The question, then, isn't just about the presence of oil underground. The real issue is who will control it and how its benefits will be distributed. When the discovery of 50 billion barrels of oil in Burkina Faso made headlines, Western diplomats didn't doubt its authenticity. Instead, their immediate concern was about management and control. Who would dictate the terms of production, investment, and profit sharing? And that answer didn't come through formal press briefings or multilateral agreements. It emerged from the shifting political winds of the Sahel. France, once the dominant external player in Burkina Faso, has seen its influence collapse. In its place, Russia has stepped in. To grasp the full meaning of this shift, you must look beyond the oil fields and into the evolving centers of political power. This is not simply a matter of resource ownership. It's about trust, alliances, and who is allowed to protect and profit from those resources. Historically, Burkina Faso was one of France's most dependable francophone allies in West Africa. French troops were stationed on its soil. French businesses dominated sectors like banking and communications, and Paris enjoyed direct access to the country's political elite. It was a textbook example of the so-called Franc-Afrique system, deep-rooted, complex, and seemingly immovable. But discontent was brewing beneath the surface. Many Burkinabé began to see France's involvement not as support, but as interference. Military operations, first under Operation Serval and later Operation Barkhane, failed to curb the rise of extremist violence. Public frustration grew as terrorist attacks worsened and French-led strategies yielded few results. At the same time, accusations of corruption and dependency mounted. Western aid was increasingly viewed as conditional and self-serving, often nudging the country in directions that aligned more with French interests than with the Burkinabe people's needs. Then came 2022, when a young army captain named Ibrahim Traor'e led a coup that overthrew the civilian government. This wasn't merely a political shakeup, it marked a decisive rejection of the Western political and economic order. It was a loud and clear message that Burkina Faso was ready to forge a new path. Yet, Traor'e didn't isolate his country. He pivoted, quickly and purposefully, toward new allies. In the months following the coup, a clear pattern emerged. Russian influence grew not through official embassies or grand state visits, but through more discreet means: private security partnerships, military consultants, and informal diplomatic envoys. Russia proved adept at navigating the situation. They didn't come bearing colonial baggage, and they offered what Burkina Faso's new leadership craved: support without condescension. The relationship evolved quietly but rapidly, and within a year, it was clear that Russia was becoming Ouagadougou's preferred partner. The turning point was defined by a series of bold decisions. First, the government ended its security cooperation with French forces. Then it began systematically removing French influence, revoking privileges for NGOs, banning French media outlets, and finally, expelling the French ambassador after accusing him of political interference. By the time the last French troops withdrew, it was more than a military disengagement. It was a symbolic eviction, a final and public break from a colonial-era alliance that no longer served Burkina Faso's vision for its future. Once seen as France's firm foothold in West Africa, Burkina Faso has now cast its former colonial partner aside. In its place, Russia has stepped in, and not subtly. The clearest signal of Moscow's rising influence came in late 2023, when it reopened its embassy in Ouagadougou after more than 30 years of silence. This was more than a bureaucratic formality, it was a declaration of intent. Russia was not just visiting, it was settling in. Shortly afterward, Russian military advisors began arriving, but not as part of flashy, uniformed delegations. Instead, they came through discreet cooperation agreements. On the ground, local forces began receiving Russian training, modern equipment, and advisory support. Russian language courses appeared in elite military institutions, embedding cultural ties within Burkina Faso's defense infrastructure. At the same time, in boardrooms and behind closed doors, negotiations were underway. Gazprom, Russia's state-owned energy giant, was securing exploration rights in the oil-rich northern territories. By the time the enormous oil reserve was officially confirmed, Russia had already established a firm grip on both the political and economic apparatus of the state. So, why would President Ibrahim Traor'e put so much trust in the Kremlin? The answer isn't rooted in shared values or political doctrine. It's grounded in practical necessity. France and other Western powers demanded political reforms, transparent elections, and anti-corruption measures as preconditions for their continued support. Their aid came with fine print. Russia offered something altogether different: non-interference. Sovereignty was respected, regardless of who held power. Where the West saw a military dictatorship, Moscow saw a reliable partner. For Traor'e, who had seized power in a coup and was still consolidating his rule, this was not just welcome, it was vital. But beyond mutual convenience, there was strategic value. Russia, facing international sanctions and increasing isolation from global energy markets, was seeking new allies and new resource avenues. Partnering with a freshly oil-rich African nation served both an economic and a symbolic purpose. For the Kremlin, this was about more than just barrels of crude. It was a geopolitical statement. Here was a former French colony, not only resisting Western influence, but actively aligning with a sanctioned Eurasian power. The optics were powerful. For Burkina Faso, this alignment wasn't just a diplomatic pivot, it was a lifeline. With France's military presence withdrawn, the country faced intensifying jihadist threats and growing domestic instability. Russia's willingness to provide military aid, without lectures or preconditions, offered President Traor'e breathing room to stabilize his regime. And perhaps most importantly, the shift in alliances found resonance among ordinary Burkinabe citizens. Many in urban areas had grown weary of France long before the political elite did. For years, France's promises of security and development had been undermined by rising violence and rampant corruption. Many locals saw French interventions as little more than a colonial continuation, masking control behind the guise of partnership. Russia's arrival, in contrast, was portrayed as a clean break from the past. No colonial history, no paternalism, just practical cooperation. When the discovery of 50 billion barrels of oil hit global headlines, it didn't just confirm Burkina Faso's hidden wealth, it reinforced the narrative of a new beginning. This future, as envisioned by the current leadership, is no longer tied to Western capitals. It will be shaped by decisions made in Ouagadougou and Moscow. But the real test lies ahead, not in discovery, but in delivery. With such immense reserves beneath their feet, the question now is how to turn underground potential into above-ground progress. And more critically, who benefits first. Because now, with the groundwork laid, the national vision is coming into focus. Plans are being drafted for expansive infrastructure, networks of highways, energy refineries, and new cities that could emerge from the sands of the Sahel. In many nations, oil is the final goal, the pot of gold, the endgame. But in Burkina Faso, leaders are presenting it differently. This oil find is not being hailed as a miracle windfall, but rather as a starting point, a strategic lever for broader transformation. President Traorè's administration isn't branding Burkina Faso as the next petrostate. Instead, they're pitching it as Africa's upcoming transformation hub. The ambition is to use energy not just to power vehicles or boost GDP, but to reimagine the country's identity and role on the continent. And interestingly, the blueprint for this vision isn't being drawn from Paris or even Moscow. Instead, the inspiration seems to come from further east, from the gleaming cities of the United Arab Emirates. If you pay close attention to the rhetoric coming from Burkina Faso's leadership today, you'll hear the echoes of Dubai's Desert to Dynasty story. Bold infrastructure, rapid modernization, and a nation built from the ground up on the back of resource wealth. Once a small, obscure fishing village, Dubai transformed into a global powerhouse of logistics, skyscrapers, trade zones, and tech hubs, all initially fueled by oil. It wasn't oil that sustained its dominance, but it served as the ignition for what came next. That's the inspiration Burkina Faso seems to be following. Rather than allowing oil to become a constraint, the country is positioning it as a springboard. Behind closed doors, the Burkinabe government is drafting extensive, long-term infrastructure blueprints, financed not just by oil revenues, but through partial ownership in the oil operations themselves. Under newly negotiated terms with Gazprom, the Burkinabe state is reportedly acquiring stakes in downstream assets, such as refineries, pipelines, and storage sites. This approach deviates from the usual African model, where countries typically receive royalties while foreign firms dominate the value chain. The goal isn't to merely extract crude and ship it out. Instead, Burkina Faso plans to process the oil domestically, producing refined outputs like gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel, not just for neighboring nations, but for broader continental export. The Ministry of Energy has already unveiled plans for 3 industrial corridors spanning the country, northward to the Mali border, eastward to Niger, and south toward Ghana. These routes, anchored by new energy hubs, aim to reposition Burkina Faso's landlocked geography into a strategic advantage for regional logistics. It's a bold and ambitious vision, one that many foreign observers greet with skepticism. Turning a conflict-affected, landlocked nation into a regional trade powerhouse isn't merely about having resources. It also requires political stability, strong governance, and time. But for President Traor'e and his administration, these challenges are seen not as deterrents, but as part of a long-term gamble, with Russia backing the bet. Plans include solar-powered industrial parks to integrate renewable energy alongside oil. Transport infrastructure will serve dual purposes, facilitating trade and deepening regional ties. While critics question the feasibility, Traor'e and his government remain unfazed. In fact, they're banking on being underestimated. Traorè's strategy isn't about utopian dreams. It's a calculated rebellion against conventional development pathways. He has rejected the Western model of development loans and IMF conditions. There will be no more waiting on climate finance handouts or externally dictated reforms. If the West won't collaborate on their terms, Burkina Faso plans to forge its own path, powered by its own resources, efforts, and chosen partners. Importantly, this transformation isn't limited to oil. Over the past year, the country has restructured its mining industry, renegotiated numerous foreign contracts, and launched national enterprises overseeing everything from gold to food logistics. Oil wealth is intended to catalyze a broader diversification plan. This includes establishing a national development bank to support homegrown businesses, a tech startup fund to keep young talent from leaving the country, and the launch of Le Moulin du Sahel, a food processing initiative already exporting local rice to neighboring nations, a quiet but telling step toward economic self-reliance. All of this is being framed as part of what Traorè's administration calls a new model of African governance. One where natural wealth doesn't trickle down slowly, but is circulated intentionally and inclusively. Critics argue the agenda is overly ambitious, questioning how a country beset by insurgency and political uncertainty could evolve into an economic beacon in just 10 years. But they may be overlooking a vital shift, a psychological awakening. For the first time in a generation, a Burkinabe leader isn't seeking sympathy or asking for time. He's claiming control. He's not just asking for support. He's asking the people to build, with oil as the down payment. To prevent the pitfalls that plagued other oil-rich African nations, the state is already putting safeguards in place. A digital tracking system is being rolled out to monitor oil revenues in real time. Alongside it, new transparency dashboards are being piloted, designed to let ordinary citizens see where the money goes, who gets infrastructure, how contracts are awarded, and what percentage of the national budget is funded by petroleum profits. If it works, and that's still a big if, Burkina Faso won't just be pumping oil. It'll be pumping legitimacy into public institutions, investment into industries, purpose into a nation long dismissed as expendable by the world's power players. The stakes are enormous. The model is delicate. But for once, the vision is sharp. Burkina Faso doesn't want to be another Nigeria. It wants to become the first Burkina Faso, an original, not a copy. But every bold blueprint comes under fire. And now, with development accelerating, the pressure is mounting, internally and from forces far beyond its borders. Still, nothing seems poised to stop Ibrahim Traor'e. Not international pressure, not covert threats, not even the quiet murmurs of sabotage whispered in diplomatic backrooms. Because he understands exactly what's at stake and exactly who's watching. For years, Burkina Faso was treated as a pawn on a chessboard carved by colonial powers. Wealth was extracted, contracts were signed in backrooms, and the people were left with little more than promises and poverty. But this time, the game is changing. Traor'e isn't just leading a government, he's leading a historical correction. He wants every barrel, every ounce of value, to benefit the people it belongs to. No more intermediaries, no more colonial relics, no more development aid tied to deeper debt. He's building something audacious, a future where Burkinabe citizens own what lies beneath their feet. And no challenge, no foreign media narrative, no diplomatic fallout is going to slow that momentum. Because for Traor'e, this fight isn't about power anymore. It's about dignity, about destiny, about rewriting the future with Burkinabe hands and Burkinabe will. So the real questions remain. Will Traor'e back down? How long will it take before Burkina Faso becomes what it dares to envision? Can any outside force stop what's already in motion? Is this the rise of a new African model, or the start of another struggle? Let us know what you think in the comments.
We are here to tell American generals, instead of making an American security report, they will lie, as they usually do.
Colin Powell, Amanti.
Colin Powell lied, Saddam Hussein is dead. Barack Obama lied, Gaddafi is dead. This time it will not pass. Our economy belongs to us. Our gold belongs to us. Our underground resources belong to us.
April 30th, 2025. A date that will echo across African history like a thunderclap. It wasn't a national holiday. It wasn't a scheduled protest. Yet across the continent, from the red dust roads of Burkina Faso to the bustling streets of Accra and Nairobi, something unprecedented happened. They came, in thousands, maybe millions. Men, women, and youth flooded the streets, not in anger, but in reverence, in unity, carrying banners, chanting his name, raising their fists, not for a local leader, but for a man they now call Africa's last hope. But what made this moment truly historic is that it wasn't confined to Africa. In Paris, in London, in New York, Africans in the diaspora marched too. They sang one name, Traor'e, not just the president of Burkina Faso, but a symbol of defiance, of sovereignty, of revolution, and now a vision of a united Africa. Imagine this, Ibrahim Traor'e, not just a national leader, but the face of an African Union reborn. One flag, one voice, one future. But here's the burning question that haunts both friend and foe alike. Will he get the chance? Will the dream of African unity finally rise, or be crushed once more in the shadows of foreign interests and old betrayals? This is not just a political story, it's the beginning of a battle for a continent's soul. Let's uncover the truth. A day unlike any in modern African history. From Ouagadougou to Accra, Nairobi to the streets of Paris and New York, a wave of solidarity erupted. Not for a celebrity, not for a sports icon, but for a revolutionary leader, Captain Ibrahim Traor'e of Burkina Faso. In the heart of Ouagadougou, thousands gathered at Place de la Révolution, their voices rising in unison. Long live Captain Traor'e. Flags of Burkina Faso and Russia flew side by side, while banners called out foreign powers for their hypocrisy. And in the crowd, faces burned with passion, not fear, because the people knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a rally, it was a message to the world. Days earlier, US AFRICOM General Michael Langley had launched a public smear campaign, accusing President Traor'e of mismanaging Burkina Faso's gold, a familiar script used time and again to discredit African leaders who dared to challenge Western dominance. But the people weren't buying it. Musician activist OCB Johan captured the moment with chilling precision. Colin Powell lied and Iraq was destroyed. Obama lied and Gaddafi was murdered. But this time, we will not fall. His words weren't poetry, they were prophecy. Because history is repeating itself, but something feels different now. Africa is no longer silent, no longer passive. The same tactics used to destroy leaders like Gaddafi, Lumumba, and Sankara are being recycled. But the continent is waking up. The people see the pattern: accuse, isolate, eliminate. But Traor'e is not standing alone. He is surrounded by a generation that refuses to kneel. The question now is not just about one man's survival, but whether this rising wave of African consciousness will be enough to rewrite the destiny of an entire continent. Muammar Gaddafi wasn't the villain they painted him to be. Behind the Western propaganda was a visionary, a man who dared to dream of a united Africa, one currency backed by gold, one continental army, one government, a true Pan-African renaissance. But that dream was crushed under NATO bombs and the lie that justified it, authored by Barack Obama and echoed by a complicit global media. Today, years after Gaddafi's brutal assassination, the truth has clawed its way to the surface. Africans have learned. And this time, as musician Johan so powerfully put it, their lies will not affect us. They tried to tarnish Captain Traor'e with the same brush, but the spell is broken. The eyes of Africa are wide open. President Traor'e has become more than just a head of state. He has become a symbol of resistance, of rebirth. His bold defiance against neo-colonialism and his unwavering commitment to the people have resonated across the continent. From the villages of Niger to the streets of Johannesburg, Africans are watching. And they see a different kind of leader. Not one groomed by foreign diplomats, not one lining his pockets with stolen aid, but a man who walks in the footsteps of Sankara, Lumumba, and Gaddafi, yet writes his own chapter in Africa's fight for sovereignty. That's why, in the heart of Ouagadougou, you'll find supporters like Sekou Ansumariam Dukali, who traveled all the way from Liberia just to stand beside him. He is hope, Sekou said. Hope for Africa, for Black people, and for every freedom fighter across the globe. But now, hope is no longer enough. Across the continent, a new cry is rising. Africans aren't just cheering for Traor'e, they're demanding something far greater. For the first time in decades, they want a single leader to speak for all of Africa. Not a bureaucrat in an AU office, but a true visionary, a warrior of the people. Because for far too long, Africans have lived under corrupt puppets, compromised elites, and leaders who sold their nations piece by piece to the highest bidder in the West. Traor'e, they believe, is different. And if history has taught us anything, it's this. The right leader, at the right moment, can ignite a revolution no bullet can stop. For decades, Africa has been handed from one puppet regime to the next. Leaders too weak to stand tall, too greedy to care. They've bowed to Western pressure, upheld foreign systems, and made decisions not in the interest of their people, but in service to their overseas masters. The result? A continent shackled by debt, destabilized by intervention, and stripped of its potential. But then came a rupture in the chain. A man unafraid to break the mold. Captain Ibrahim Traor'e. Young, bold, and unapologetically revolutionary, he made it clear from the start. Africa will no longer dance to the West's tune. From the very moment he seized power, Traor'e drew a hard line. He expelled French troops, cut ties with exploitative Western institutions, and declared the end of neocolonialism in Burkina Faso. His message was clear. The West has never brought us peace, only poverty, dependency, and destruction. Take the Sahel crisis, for example. When insurgencies erupted, France was the first to offer help. But under their so-called protection, the crisis only worsened. A decade passed. The militants got stronger. Weapons flooded in. Lives were lost. Yet France, armed with NATO tech and billions in resources, claimed they couldn't stop it. Why? Because maybe they never intended to. It's a pattern that repeats like clockwork. In Niger, in South Sudan. Wherever US and French forces set up bases, instability follows. How can the world's most advanced militaries, bragging the best intelligence networks and satellite surveillance, fail so spectacularly at stopping a few ragtag insurgents? The truth is hard to swallow, but it's staring us in the face. They're not solving the problem. They're sustaining it. Because chaos breeds dependency, and dependency ensures control. Traor'e saw through the illusion, and that's why he's dangerous. Not because he's extreme, but because he's awake. And now, he's waking up the rest of Africa. Here's a hard question no one in the West wants to answer. If there were no crisis, how would France and the United States justify their military presence in Africa? How else would they access the continent's gold, cobalt, uranium, and oil? Resources they do not own, but desperately need? Insecurity has become their key, a manufactured door to African wealth. Just look at the Democratic Republic of Congo. Faced with relentless chaos in its eastern regions, President Félix Tshisekedi has now signed a deal with the US, giving Washington access to Congo's vast mineral reserves in exchange for so-called protection. But ask yourself, if peace reigned in the Congo, would that deal even be necessary? Absolutely not. Insecurity isn't just a tragedy, it's a strategy. Because when a nation is under siege, it can't dream, it can't build, it can only survive. In places like the DRC and the Sahel, the governments are left with one overwhelming priority: combat the insurgency. And in that desperation, Western powers arrive like saviors, with offers of aid, arms, and military support. But here's the catch. They never eliminate the threat. They only suppress it, just enough to keep the country dependent. This isn't speculation. It's history. In the Sahel, France stayed for over a decade, promising peace while the violence only escalated. In Congo, we're seeing the same playbook unfold. Security traded for sovereignty. But a new chapter is being written. President Traor'e of Burkina Faso and the rising alliance of AES military leaders have pulled back the curtain. They've seen the truth, that relying on foreign forces for security is a trap, not a solution. So they made a different choice. They cut the cord. They severed ties with France. They rejected the false protection of the West. And in doing so, they ignited a wave of resistance and hope. Across Africa and the diaspora, Traor'e is no longer seen as just a president. He's become a symbol, a signal that Africa no longer has to beg for peace. It can build it on its own terms. For Africa to rise, truly rise, it needs more than aid, more than conferences, more than carefully crafted speeches from world leaders. What it needs is a leader with vision, a leader with courage, a leader who dares to break the chains of foreign dependency. That's why the name Captain Ibrahim Traor'e now echoes across every corner of the continent, from the Sahara to Soweto, from the diaspora in London to Harlem. Africans are no longer just supporting him as the president of Burkina Faso. They're calling for something much bolder. They want him to lead the entire continent, because they've imagined what could happen if a man like Traor'e, uncompromised, fearless, and unbought, was handed the reins of a united Africa. But then the question rises, can Africa ever truly unite? For decades, this dream has been both a rallying cry and a dividing line among Pan-Africanists. Supporters say unity is the key to economic independence and power. Critics say it's a fantasy, pointing to the sheer diversity of Africa. Over 50 nations, thousands of languages, countless tribes and cultures. How can such complexity be governed under one flag? But what if that very diversity is not a weakness, but a strength waiting to be organized? What if the only thing stopping African unity is the belief that it's impossible? Let's face the facts. Africa is home to over 1.5 billion people, nearly the same population as China. Yet while China stands as a single powerful nation with one currency, one military, and one government, Africa remains divided, trapped within borders drawn by colonial hands during an era of conquest. China has over 300 languages, yet it functions as a cohesive superpower. So why not Africa? Imagine a continent united, not just in spirit, but in law. One passport, one army, one voice on the global stage. That vision isn't just powerful, it's inevitable. And perhaps, just perhaps, Traor'e is the man destined to light the fire that will finally make it real. The vision of a united Africa didn't start today. It was born in the hearts of giants, men who bled, dreamed, and died for the freedom of the continent. Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah, Muammar Gaddafi. They knew that true independence could never be achieved if Africa remained fragmented. They understood that only unity, political, military, and economic, could sever the last chains of colonialism. But that dream terrified the West, because a united Africa meant power. It meant independence. It meant no more exploitation. And so, one by one, those visionaries were silenced, not by their own people, but by foreign powers with everything to lose and empires to protect. To understand how Africa became so fractured, we must look at the colonial playbook, divide and conquer. During the colonial era, Europeans saw a continent that was strong in its communal values and intertribal cooperation. So, they injected poison into the system. They drew artificial borders. They elevated one tribe while suppressing another. They inflamed tensions that had never truly existed, and then watched as communities turned against themselves. This strategy not only allowed them to dominate the continent, but also ensured that Africa would remain divided long after the colonial flags came down. The wounds they left behind still fester today. Nowhere is this tragedy more evident than in Rwanda. Before colonization, the Hutus and Tutsis lived side by side, not as enemies, but as neighbors. They spoke the same language, shared the same customs, even married into one another's families. A Hutu could rise to the status of a Tutsi by wealth. Status was earned, not inherited. But when the Belgians arrived, they tore that fabric apart. Influenced by racist pseudoscience, they declared the Tutsis racially superior, favoring them in governance, education, and opportunity. The result? Resentment, hatred, genocide. And yet, this was no accident. It was design. A strategy repeated across Africa, ensuring the continent stayed weak, divided, and easy to control. The seeds of genocide were planted long before the machetes were drawn. When Belgian colonizers arrived in Rwanda, they didn't just take land, they rewrote identities. Every Rwandan was forced to carry an identity card, marking them permanently as Hutu or Tutsi. The age-old fluidity that once allowed a wealthy Hutu to ascend to honorary Tutsi status was erased overnight. Education, jobs, and influence were reserved for Tutsis, while the Hutu majority was systematically pushed aside. Even Christian missionaries joined in, preaching a twisted theology of racial hierarchy, painting Tutsis as naturally superior. The result was catastrophic. A society once built on kinship and shared culture was now boiling with resentment. And that resentment exploded in 1994, in one of the most horrifying genocides the world has ever seen. But the bloodshed didn't end in Rwanda. It spilled across the border, infecting the Democratic Republic of Congo, a nation rich in minerals, but cursed by its location and history. The ethnic tensions sparked in Rwanda followed fleeing refugees and militia into Congolese territory, setting off years of brutal warfare. And right behind the chaos, Western corporations and governments quietly mining cobalt, coltan, and gold while the region burned. It's no coincidence. Just like during the colonial era, chaos is not just tolerated, it is engineered. Decades after so-called independence, the West continues to wield the same weapon, division. Only now, it's cloaked in diplomacy, corporate contracts, and quiet intelligence operations. And yet, some still say African unity is a fantasy. They point to language differences, tribal diversity, and cultural complexity. But here's the truth. Africa cannot return to a pre-colonial past. Colonialism forcibly merged hundreds of ethnic groups into single nations. It drew artificial borders with no regard for language or tribe. That damage has already been done. And if the scars are shared, so should the solution be. All 54 African nations bear the same wound, colonial fragmentation. So why shouldn't they share the same destiny? A united Africa isn't just a dream. It's the only path forward. Because if the West could use the same strategy to divide every African country, then Africa must use the same unity to reclaim its future. Before the Europeans carved up the continent, Africa thrived as a mosaic of tribes, each with its own language, customs, and sacred traditions. They were distinct, yes, but not divided. Trade routes connected them, alliances were forged, and cooperation flourished. But colonialism did something far more invasive than just occupation. It forced unrelated tribes into unnatural unions, drawing borders with no regard for history or humanity. The result? Fragile nations, riddled with division. And even after independence, that division didn't fade. It deepened. Today, while the rest of the world views Africa as a single entity, Africans themselves remain trapped in silos, disconnected by artificial lines, and held back by a psychological wall of us versus them. This is precisely why the African Union has struggled, because true integration has never taken root. But the truth remains, Africa cannot go back. It cannot return to a time of isolated tribes and fractured identities. The colonial damage is done. And now, the only path forward is to transform what once divided us into what unites us. This idea of separate countries, of each nation minding its own business, has been Africa's greatest weakness and the West's greatest weapon. It has allowed foreign powers to manipulate, exploit, and dominate with ease. But imagine what could happen if those 54 nations stood as one currency, one army, one voice. And who better to lead that voice than President Ibrahim Traor'e, a man who has not only resisted imperialism, but inspired a movement that spans the continent and its diaspora. People of African descent and allies of African liberation across the world to support the leadership of Ibrahim Traor'e, resist neo-colonialism and imperialism, and build Pan-African solidarity and diaspora unity. So you can see that this demand from the people did not start today. Africans have been watching Traor'e and now know what it means to have a strong leader. But will President Traor'e ever become the president of a united Africa? What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comment section below.
Our only crime, perhaps, is trying to revolutionize our health system, for example, to equip our hospitals to build modern hospitals. Perhaps our crime has been to want to revolutionize our education system, to build standard schools, to change our curricula. Our crime is perhaps to have allowed our farmers to have cheaper fertilizer, to plow their fields for free so that we achieve food self-sufficiency. Or perhaps our crime is to want to build road and rail infrastructure so that our populations can move. This is one of those days that will go down in the history books of Burkina Faso and the entire Sahel Alliance region. The people that were present here this morning and those watching on TV were filled with anticipation as the sun began its ascent, casting a warm glow over Ouagadougou. This crowd comprised of citizens from all walks of life, all gathered in the Place de la Nation, and their faces were reflecting a mixture of pride and hope. The occasion was the annual flag-raising ceremony, but this year held added weight and meaning because the flag of the new AES alliance, comprising Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, was also being raised. Following the raising of these flags, Captain Ibrahim Traor'e, the youthful president of Burkina Faso, even after several failed coups plots on his life, stepped forward to address the throng. He stood tall and resolute, his voice resonating with conviction as he began to speak, explaining why he has been a target. His words, carefully chosen and powerfully delivered, were not just for the people of Burkina Faso gathered before him, but for the entire continent of Africa. He spoke of resilience, self-determination, and the unwavering pursuit of sovereignty. At the beginning, people mocked us, ridiculed us because for them, 3 poor countries uniting would lead to nothing. But we continued our path. And today, I think they realize that we are succeeding at something. He also addressed the challenges facing the nation and the continent, acknowledging the hardships, but emphasizing the unwavering spirit of the Burkinabe people and their commitment to building a brighter future. His message was one of unity, encouraging intra-African cooperation and collaboration to overcome shared obstacles and achieve lasting prosperity. Captain Traore's speech, broadcasted live across the nation and disseminated via international news outlets, was a call to action, a clarion call for a new era of African independence and progress. Here is the full speech, translated from French to English for your understanding. This is Uplifting Africa. Today, we solemnly display the colors of the AES Confederation to show that the AES is continuing its path, not without difficulties, but we continue to build, little by little, what our people aspire to. At the beginning, people mocked us, ridiculed us because for them, 3 poor countries uniting would lead to nothing. But we continued our path. And today, I think they realize that we are succeeding at something that some do not wish to see, but that some have also failed to do. When you try to break the mold to revolutionize your life, people will always ridicule you. They will mock you, but eventually they will realize that you are right. I think that today, looking at international and even sub-regional geopolitics, those who are enlightened will understand that the AES was right to take this path. For those who do not want to wake up, we can do nothing for them. They will always remain in their sleep, but we will continue to evolve. We hope that through this solemn ceremony, all the friends of Burkina Faso, the friends of the AES, can understand that we remain open to all those who want a sincere and respectful partnership. The AES will be a welcoming land, and we can collaborate, but those who come to exploit us, or have a partnership that we deem inappropriate, who come to violate our sovereignty, our independence, should understand that we will not be ready to welcome them. We will continue our march because difficulties contribute to forging us. Difficulties make us strong. The AES was born in blood and sweat. It will continue its path for the happiness of the people of the Sahel. Before we continue, if you love what we do here on this channel and would like to support us, then you might consider gifting us a super thanks donation of any amount, or you might as well become an uplifting Africa channel member for exclusive content, perks and more. Links to join are in the pinned comment and in the description box. I hope that everyone, through their daily actions, will ensure that the revolution we have started is the good and best one that can inspire all of Africa to unite.
La bonne et la meilleure qui puisse inspirer toute l'Afrique à s'unir. Quand je prends le cas du Burkina Faso,
when I take the case of Burkina Faso, we have tried many things, and we will continue to undertake many things, but it has not always been easy.
Mais ça n'a pas été toujours facile.
Our only crime, perhaps, is trying to revolutionize our health system, for example, to equip our hospitals, to build modern hospitals. Perhaps our crime has been to want to revolutionize our education system, to build standard schools, to change our curricula. Our crime is perhaps to have allowed our farmers to have cheaper fertilizer, to plow their fields for free so that we achieve food self-sufficiency. Or perhaps our crime is to want to build road and rail infrastructure so that our populations can move. In short, everything we try to do, I think some have always tried, unfortunately, salon slaves, Africans who blindly follow the imperialists, have tried to discourage us. There is no reason to be demotivated because history has always proven us right, and history will continue to prove us right. Today, so many things grow on our soil. When we announced at the beginning that we wanted to launch into agriculture, they took us for fools. They said it would not work. Today, our cocoa is doing very well. Sunflower is doing very well in Burkina. Our wheat is doing very well. In short, there are so many speculations that we have tried, but they have tried to discourage us. And I hope that you will never be discouraged in your daily tasks to revolutionize your lives. And it must be so for everyone. And to say that Africa must understand that we have the potential to be self-sufficient, to be independent, to be sovereign. This battle will continue within the AES, and we will continue to join hands, to unite. Long live a united and prosperous Africa. Long live a united, free, peaceful and prosperous Sahel. Long live Burkina Faso. May God bless our homeland. Homeland or death, we shall overcome.
particularly from a friendly country like yours. So you're very much welcome all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, though you are here to say bye, as a party and as a country, we really value the relationship between the two countries.
We had a good and excellent and productive discussions to further strengthening the bilateral relations between our two countries. You know well that the relations between our two countries formed long time before, even before the independence of Namibia. The TPRK, especially the President Kim Il-sung, great leaders, President Kim Il-sung and Comrade Kim Jong-il actively supported and they rendered all the material and spiritual assistance to the just struggle of the Namibian people to for the liberation and freedom. And after that also, both countries maintained excellent and good and cordial relations. And we are also fully prepared to further develop and strengthen those relations. And it is our firm conviction that both countries will work very hard.
Namibia just broke the unspoken rules of global diplomacy, and the world is paying attention. In April 2025, a quiet yet bold decision was made in Windhoek that could reshape the balance of power across Africa. Namibia, a small but sovereign nation, stepped onto the world stage and reminded us all. Africa is no longer asking for permission. This is more than just a story about diplomacy. It's a story about African pride, uranium, female leadership, and the future of the continent.
Of course, this goes to all Namibians who have contributed to the growth of our economy. Namibia is indeed blessed with abundant renewable and non-renewable resources, which we must seize through value addition for the benefit of our people. Sectors such as mining, energy, oil and gas, tourism and fisheries are the key economic engine with the potential to unlock employment opportunity for the Namibians. However, this potential remains far-fetched if we continue to export raw materials without processing them. This presents a compelling opportunity for local business people, local investors to invest in the manufacturing sector and the emerging industries such as sports and creative industry, which are, while calling for foreign direct investment in our country, as a government, we have to have deliberate programs aimed at strengthening the local business people and local entrepreneurs. We have to invest in homegrown initiative that does not only enhance the value addition of our resources, but also transform and grow our economy, create wealth, empower our community, and sustainable jobs and development. Director of ceremonies, although it will come without time, Namibia must rise beyond being a mere supplier of raw material and to export semi-processed up to fully finished product. Our small population should not discourage us. I know it has been used by some people, whether it's deliberate or not, to make Namibians believe that because our population is small, we cannot develop industry. We are part of the global village. And when we are planning our industrialization, we are not only doing it looking at ourselves, we are doing it looking at the world. We are currently part and parcel of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area that allows African countries to trade among themselves. So therefore, Namibia, we must be bold enough, we must be courageous enough for us to contribute to the African basket of goods and the services that can be traded within the continent and beyond.
In this video, we'll unpack Namibia's game-changing move, explore the deeper meaning behind it, and show why this moment matters for every African and for the entire world. Namibia's recent engagement with North Korea regarding nuclear energy has stirred both concern and admiration globally. While some see danger, others see dignity. For Namibia, this wasn't just a partnership, it was a declaration of independence. Western nations, particularly the US and Europe, were quick to raise eyebrows, warning of sanctions or consequences. But Namibia stood firm. After all, this isn't the Cold War. African nations have the right and the responsibility to make decisions based on their own national interests, not outdated global politics. For Namibia, nuclear cooperation isn't about aggression, it's about development. It's about energy independence, economic progress, and technological growth. And in doing so, Namibia reminded the world that Africa is not a pawn. It's a player. At the center of this bold shift is a historic leader, President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, the first female head of state in Namibia's history. But she's more than a first. She's a force. Netumbo has long been a champion of Pan-African ideals, standing firm in the belief that Africa must define its own future. Her leadership during this diplomatic event signals not only a geopolitical message but a symbolic one. African women are now leading the conversation. Her speeches have emphasized sovereignty, peace, and equality, and her actions back those words. By choosing to engage with North Korea, she is saying to the world, "We will not be dictated to." In a world where female leadership often faces doubt, Netumbo is setting a new standard: bold, visionary, and unapologetically African. Uranium, a mineral many don't talk about, but one that powers much of the modern world. Namibia is the second largest uranium producer in Africa, and this resource is now at the center of global attention. For decades, African resources were extracted and exported under exploitative terms. Today, Namibia's uranium is different. It's a source of leverage. By discussing nuclear cooperation, Namibia is not just selling minerals. It's setting terms, building partnerships, and demanding respect. This is the kind of value-based resource diplomacy Africa has long deserved. It sends a clear message. Our resources are no longer a curse. They are our currency for influence, development, and self-reliance. Namibia's action is not an isolated event. Across the continent, similar awakenings are happening. Rwanda is mastering diplomacy. Ghana is rethinking trade. Kenya is investing in digital sovereignty. Africa is rising, not as a block of aid recipients, but as a coalition of independent nations shaping the 21st century. For too long, Africa's political choices have been filtered through the lens of Western approval. But now, from the Sahel to Southern Africa, leaders are rejecting dependency. They are demanding fair trade, mutual respect, and honest partnerships. This is the future Africa deserves. A continent unafraid to make bold moves, build diverse alliances, and stand by its values, whether or not the West approves. So why is the West so concerned? One word: precedent. If Namibia can resist pressure and succeed, what's to stop others from doing the same? Africa's assertion of independence threatens an old world order that was never built for Africa's benefit. The fear isn't just about uranium or North Korea. It's about losing control over a continent that's been manipulated for centuries. This shift is not about turning to China, Russia, or North Korea blindly. It's about having the freedom to choose, something the Global South has been denied for too long. Africa is declaring, we want partnerships, not puppet strings. Namibia's decision is bigger than policy. It's a message to every African child, every rural village, every future leader. You have the right to choose your future. This is about mindset, dignity, power. It's about breaking chains, not just physical, but mental and diplomatic ones. So the next time someone tells you Africa should be careful, remind them, Africa has been careful for too long. Now, it's time to be bold. And Namibia just showed us how. Like, share, and subscribe to make Africa great for more stories of African power, pride, and purpose. This is our time. Let's tell our story, our way.
Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have endorsed an initiative by Morocco to give them access to the Atlantic Ocean. This was said by Moroccan Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I know you heard about this many, many times, but I'm going to say it again. Brotherhood has nothing to do with skin color. Nothing. Brotherhood has nothing to do with the language you speak. Oh, he speaks my language. Brotherhood has nothing to do with tribes. Brotherhood has nothing to do with nationalities. Absolutely not. Because some of your biggest enemies are from your nationality. They speak your own language. They're from your tribe. They're from the continent. Sometimes the people from very far. Sometimes not so far. The people from different countries. Brotherhood is proven. It's not gifted. It's not. You may like somebody because they feel close, but you still need to prove to each other that you are brothers like that. Or else you still be very good friend with the people that are not in your life anymore. How many people have disappointed you at the core, at the deepest level? And I'm not talking about small, stupid disappointment. People you never thought could have done some of the worst things that's been done to you. And you were extremely hurt, vexed in your own self. Brotherhood is proven. Okay. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing good. It's a beautiful day. Thank you very much for stopping by. You are appreciated. You know, here we talk about Africa. You want to know about the lands, the motherlands, you're at the right place. Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, you're at the right place. You want to know about South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, you are at the right place, my brother. You want to know about Ghana, Nigeria, Benin, Togo, you're at the right place. Namibia, Malawi, you name it, Sudan, you're the right place. Okay, we can't name everybody. I see you from all over the place. Thank you, Jamaicans. Thank you, Trinidad, Tobago. Thank you, St. Lucia. Thank you, everybody. United States of America, all of our people in Australia, we see you. Okay, great stuff. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. I'm sure you've seen this so many times because everybody's talking about them. It's amazing right now. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. Great news. What is it? Well, the landlocked countries, as you can see, they are landlocked. I'm going to get back to that. Have endorsed an initiative by Morocco to give them access to the Atlantic Ocean. This was said by Moroccan Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
We express to His Majesty the appreciation of our heads of state for the consistent stance of the Kingdom of Morocco and His Majesty, for the way in which he manages the Kingdom of Morocco's relations with the so-called transition countries, including Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, by maintaining dialogue with our countries, but also by having confidence in the unique genius of our peoples.
The foreign ministries of the three military-ruled West African countries shared their country's position during a meeting Monday with King Mohammed in Rabat, the capital of Morocco, according to ministry statement. Now, what does this mean, my brothers? This means these three countries are going to work with Morocco in order to give them access to the sea. And you're probably asking yourself, why Morocco? Why not these other countries? As you can see, it's very simple. These three countries used to have access to the sea. Okay, and they used to have access to the sea from the south. Look at the map. You see them from the south. Yes, brother. This is the south is down. The north is up. East is this side, and west is that side. Okay, we family. You cannot pretend that everybody knows. Okay, you maybe know. You're very smart. Went to good school. Not everybody has that opportunity. Matter of fact, I was talking to somebody recently. A lady. She said to me she never went to school. She cannot write properly. And I was like very touched by the effort she was making to write. I'm like, wow, congratulations. This is a grown woman. She's a beautiful, beautiful woman. She's got her own business. She travels and buy stuff from I don't know which country in Asia and bring back to Africa and resell. She's doing great. She's beautiful, but she said she never went to school like that. So we cannot pretend that everybody knows. We need to show you the map so everybody understands. And also, yeah, it's out of love. Great. Now, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger used to go to the south. You see the south? Yeah. They used to go to the south to access the sea. You're asking yourself, why is the sea important? The sea is very important for business. Every country needs the sea. What do you need the sea for? You need the sea to import good and export good. Now, let's say you're probably saying to yourself, but why don't you use an aeroplane? I'm going to give you an example. Let's say you want to bring things coming from India. You're in Burkina Faso. And you have two ways to do it. Number one, you can do it via the aeroplanes, which is costly, expensive, and you have limited amount of things you can bring because an aeroplane can only carry so much things. Number two, you can bring it through the sea, which is much bigger, more convenient. You can put in as much container as you like. Now, people like to do the sea because you can do a lot of things. And because the sea is important, you have to have good collaboration with your neighbors who are next to the sea so they can give you access. However, a couple of years ago, these three countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, removed themselves from ECOWAS. What is ECOWAS? This is ECOWAS. You see the map? These countries are ECOWAS. ECOWAS is a group of countries coming together, supposedly to help each other because they're brothers. Again, now we are brothers. They help each other in a way where you don't need a visa to go to an ECOWAS country. If you're part of ECOWAS, you can go and trade. You can buy things at a very cheap price or without paying tax when you're part of ECOWAS. But unfortunately, Mali, Burkina Faso came out of ECOWAS. Why did they come out of ECOWAS, you're asking yourself? Because they were not happy. They disagreed. Why did they disagree? They disagreed because Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger wanted to come out of colonialism. You asking yourself, what is colonialism? Simply, France, Britain, and these other European countries came to Africa, colonized Africa, split it into small parts, called them countries. Countries never existed a long time ago. Europeans created countries. Once they created countries, they were looting, stealing, taking gold, diamonds, uranium, you name it, for themselves. Okay, what does Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have together? In common, they were colonized by the French. France colonized these countries for many years. In the 1960s, they freed them. They gave them what they call independence. However, they still control the economies of these countries by running things appropriately. Now, these countries recently had enough. They said our presidents are just puppets. They're not working for the interests of our people. Therefore, we need to topple them so we can actually run the country and serve our own people. They did it. By only way, it wasn't through election. It was by force. They took the country by force. They overthrew the president. Three of them together. Now, these other countries of ECOWAS were not happy about that. They say you must go through democratic procedures or process. You cannot take the country by force. These countries say, okay, this is our destiny. We are making a choice. We've had enough of France. France can go. We want to stay. Now, ECOWAS, unfortunately, receives money from the European Union. Yes, an African organization that gets money funded by European Union and many other institutions. Now, if you are funded by somebody external, do you really have power of decision? Not very much. Many people from these three countries believe the European Union was pulling the strings to get ECOWAS against Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Now, let's get back on track. The reason why they got out of ECOWAS is because once they toppled their government, the three countries toppled the government, ECOWAS decided to close the border for them. The border to what? The border to the sea, disallowing them from accessing the sea. You know the sea is vital for the economy and for the people. You block the way to the sea, expecting me to asphyxiate economically and to get my people coming in the street in anger so they can overthrow the government. Is that your brother? That's not your brother, right? Now, why are you doing that? You're doing that because I've just overthrown a president who clearly works for the interest of the West and not the interest of the people. That is when they say, okay, let's us work together, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Now, the thing that broke everything completely was when these countries, ECOWAS, were getting ready, they were gearing up to go and attack Niger.
There is a steely determination by our heads of state and government to put an end to it and to make an example of Niger, to make sure that never again are we going to allow the disruption of the region's move towards democratic consolidation in our region. ECOWAS is not going to tell the coup plotted when and where we are going to strike.
Why are you asking? Because in Niger, they toppled the president named Mohamed Bazoum. This is Bazoum. That was Tiani who replaced him. Now, the countries of ECOWAS, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, and many other countries say we're coming together logistically. We're putting money together and soldiers together. We are going to Niger to overthrow the country. Our objective is to send a clear message that we will not tolerate any overthrows. Now, when they did that, Mali and Burkina Faso say, if you dare to do that, okay, then we're going to have a big problem here. We're going to have a big problem.
Any military intervention against Niger would amount to a declaration of war against Burkina Faso and Mali.
If you attack Niger, we are going to have war. Why? Because we were part of ECOWAS, and ECOWAS are supposed to help each other. But our countries have been riddled by terrorism, okay? We've been riddled by terrorism. Not one time we heard you say, okay, we're going to put an army together to go fight terrorists. You never did that. But now you're ready to come and fight us because we toppled our president. Something is fishy. We cannot tolerate this. Now, if you see somebody that's supposedly your brother functioning in the opposite way, looking to finish your life, what do? Do you speak to somebody that looks like an Arab? Of course you do. If they are friendly to you, of course you're going to go there. That's exactly what happened. And Mali, Burkina Faso started talking after they were removed. Actually, they removed themselves of ECOWAS, creating the confederation, 3 countries functioning together and replacing each other each year. One leader from one country, next year, one leader from another country, running the things. After making phone calls local, meaning, no more roaming. When you go to the next country, you have to pay through roaming, and roaming is expensive. They made it local price, making everybody feel at home. These 3 countries decided to cooperate with Morocco, so Morocco can give them access to the sea. And by doing that, they've gone away from the southern countries, which are these black people countries, and going to the other people. Now, Niger's got goods. They have oil. They can get a lot of money through Benin. Look at Niger and Benin. Yes, Niger can extract oil through Benin. They will make a lot of money. Benin will make money too. However, Benin, instead of listening to his brother, the leaders of Benin chose to close the border. But now, if these people redirect their petrol or their oil to Algeria or Morocco, who's going to lose? Benin is going to lose. Did somebody shoot themselves in the foot? Now, congratulations, because Morocco is opening the door to these people, showing them brotherhood has nothing to do with nothing. Okay? Brotherhood is everything to do with presence, action. In December, Morocco announced a trade initiative to facilitate Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger access to the Atlantic Ocean using Moroccan ports after ECOWAS imposed trade restriction on a 3 junta-led country. The foreign ministers of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger reaffirmed their full support for commitment to accelerating its implementation during the royal meeting. The meeting comes at a time of growing tension between Morocco, regional rival Algeria, and the Sahel state. Last month, Algeria said it shut down a Malian drone. We spoke about this. There's a lot of things happening in Africa right now. A lot of big problems. Algeria not getting along with Mali, Benin not getting along with Niger. It's crazy. Morocco and Algeria pulling at each other. They may go at war. It's bad. Let me know if you feel about this. Are they wrong to look into Morocco? I mean, if you got brothers and cousins here who look like you acting weird and cooperating with your enemies, and you got a neighbor who's kind enough, has no beef with you, who do you turn to? Let me know how you feel about this. It's always
So, Liberian government, let me say this very respectfully, shame on you. So I was watching a live section where some civilians in Liberia were protesting in solidarity of Ibrahim Traor'e, Sahel State, and Burkina Faso. Where the police officer came, you can see on the picture, and tell them to stop, or else they will be arrested. And mind you, it was very peaceful protest.
A Pan-African revolution is erupting, and at the heart of this upheaval is Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader, Captain Ibrahim Traor'e, a 37-year-old military captain who has become the embodiment of African resistance, dignity, and self-determination. On Wednesday, April 30th, 2025, thousands of Africans, from Burkina Faso to Ghana, Liberia to beyond, poured into the streets, their voices united under the defiant cry of "Hands off the AES" and "Long live Captain Traor'e." These protests, sparked by a foiled coup attempt allegedly orchestrated from Ivory Coast and inflammatory remarks by US AFRICOM Commander General Michael Langley, have not only rallied Burkinabe but ignited a Pan-Africanist fervor that has left African leaders trembling, embarrassed, and exposed. For the first time in modern history, citizens of one African nation are taking to the streets to defend the leader of another, while their own presidents languish in the shadows of public disdain. This is no ordinary moment. It's a revolution of consciousness, and Traor'e is its torchbearer. In Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso's capital, the Place de la Révolution was transformed into a sea of defiance as thousands rallied in support of Captain Traor'e and his military junta. The demonstrations were a direct response to a major plot uncovered on April 21st, 2025, which Burkina Faso's military authorities claimed was orchestrated from neighboring Ivory Coast to overthrow Traor'e and sow total chaos. Adding fuel to the fire, General Michael Langley's April 3rd testimony before the US Senate, where he accused Traor'e of misusing Burkina Faso's gold reserves for personal gain, was perceived as a blatant imperialist attack. Protesters in Ouagadougou waved Burkina Faso and Russian flags, a nod to Traor'e's pivot toward non-Western alliances, and brandished banners denouncing Langley, some scrawling slave across his image in bold red ink. "Long live Captain Traor'e," they chanted, their voices echoing a resolute rejection of foreign interference. But what makes this moment historic is its continental and global reach. In Monrovia, Liberia, citizens defied their government to stage a peaceful African March for freedom under the banner of solidarity with Traor'e. On Wednesday, a group of Liberian protesters marched to the Ivorian embassy, their placards blazing with anti-imperialist slogans. They accused Ivory Coast and the United States of colluding to destabilize Burkina Faso, demanding that both nations desist from meddling in the internal governance of Burkina Faso. Their statement was unequivocal. The people of Burkina Faso deserve peace. President Traor'e is delivering meaningful development and must be allowed to continue serving his people. The protesters attempted to deliver petitions to other diplomatic missions but were halted by Liberia's national police, who cited a lack of protest permits. In a chilling escalation, Liberian authorities arrested some demonstrators and issued threats, signaling the depth of unease Traor'e's influence is causing among African elites. In Accra, Ghana, the Socialist Movement of Ghana led a solidarity rally, declaring Traor'e a symbol of African dignity and resistance. Ghanaians too joined the chorus of "Hands off the AES," a reference to the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, the revolutionary confederation of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger that has become a bulwark against neo-colonialism. Remarkably, citizens from across Africa, including those from countries as far afield as South Africa and Nigeria, either traveled to Ouagadougou or organized parallel protests in their own capitals. Sekou Ansumariam Dukali, a Liberian protester who journeyed to Burkina Faso, captured the sentiment perfectly. "I came to Ouagadougou today to participate in this demonstration in support of Captain Ibrahim Traor'e because he represents hope for Africa, hope for Black people, hope for all freedom fighters around the globe. Even beyond Africa, diaspora communities and anti-imperialist activists in Europe and the Americas took to the streets, amplifying Traor'e's message of sovereignty. To understand why Captain Ibrahim Traor'e has ignited such unprecedented support,
we must first examine the man and his mission. Since seizing power in a September 2022 coup, the second that year, Traoré has positioned himself as a modern-day Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's revolutionary icon, often dubbed Africa's Che Guevara. At just 34 when he took power, Traoré promised to restore security, dignity, and prosperity to a nation ravaged by jihadist insurgencies and neo-colonial exploitation. Unlike many African leaders who pay lip service to progress while cozying up to Western powers, Traoré has walked the talk with audacious, people-centered policies. Under his leadership, Burkina Faso has expelled French military forces, terminated exploitative mining agreements, and rejected the CFA franc, a colonial-era currency that shackles West African economies to France. Traoré has redirected national wealth toward grassroots development, investing in education, healthcare, and food security despite crippling illegal sanctions from Western powers. His nationalization of Burkina Faso's gold reserves, a move that enraged General Langley, ensures that the country's resources benefit its people, not foreign corporations. We will mine our gold ourselves, not for France, not for the West, but for our people, Traoré declared, a statement that has become a rallying cry across the continent. Traoré's defiance of imperialism is matched by his commitment to regional unity. As a key architect of the AES, he has forged a confederation with Mali and Niger, all of which have expelled French troops and prioritized African solutions to African problems. This alliance, formalized on July 6, 2024, represents a radical departure from the Western-dominated economic community of West African states, ECOWAS, which Traoré has accused of serving imperialist interests. His vision of a new Africa, free from imperialism and neo-colonialism, resonates deeply with a generation of Africans disillusioned by leaders who prioritize foreign approval over domestic progress. But it's not just policy that endears Traoré to the masses. It's his authenticity. A shy schoolboy turned counter-terrorism captain, Traoré is a man of the people, often seen in military fatigues rather than the opulent suits favored by Africa's political elite. His speeches are direct, unfiltered, and laced with the truths that pierce the veil of neo-colonial deceit. This continent has suffered and continues to suffer from the fire of the imperialists, he declared at the AES summit in Niamey, Niger on July 6, 2024. Such words are not mere rhetoric. They are a call to action, galvanizing Africans to reclaim their destiny. The outpouring of support for Traoré has cast a harsh spotlight on African leaders, many of whom are now grappling with embarrassment and fear. The sight of their own citizens marching for a foreign leader while ignoring or openly criticizing their own presidents is a public relations disaster and a stark indictment of their failures. In Liberia, President Joseph Boakai's administration was caught flat-footed as citizens rallied for Traoré, only to face arrests and threats for expressing solidarity. The heavy-handed response betrays a deeper anxiety. If Liberians are willing to risk their freedom for a Burkinabe leader, what does that say about their faith in Boakai's government? In Ivory Coast, President Alassane Ouattara faces accusations of being a dedicated US-EU NATO collaborator, with protesters in Monrovia and Ouagadougou alleging that his government is a staging ground for plots against Traoré. These claims, echoed by Burkina Faso's military authorities, have intensified tensions between the two nations, with Traoré himself accusing Ivory Coast of harboring destabilizers. The protests outside the Ivorian embassy in Monrovia were a humiliating blow to Ouattara, exposing his vulnerability to public dissent and undermining his regional influence. Across the continent, leaders like Nigeria's Bola Tinubu and Kenya's William Ruto are watching with trepidation. Their citizens' participation in pro-Traoré protests signals a growing rejection of the status quo. Governments that rely on IMF loans, Western military bases, and extractive industries to prop up their regimes. As one Ghanaian protester put it, our leaders borrow billions from the West, but what do we see? Inflation, unemployment, and excuses. Traoré is building schools and hospitals with Burkina Faso's gold. Why can't our president do the same? This sentiment, echoed in ex-posts and street demonstrations, underscores the shame of leaders who have failed to inspire or deliver. Traore's rise exposes a painful truth. African leaders are not getting this support because they have not earned it. Many have presided over economies that enrich foreign corporations while impoverishing their people. They sign military pacts with France and the US, allowing foreign troops to operate on African soil while jihadist insurgencies fester. They cling to power through rigged elections or constitutional manipulation, alienating their youth who see no future under their rule. In contrast, Traore's Burkina Faso, though not without challenges, is a beacon of hope, a nation daring to chart its own path despite immense external pressure. Captain Traore's greatest weapon is his willingness to speak truths that African leaders would rather bury. He has called out the hypocrisy of Western powers and their African proxies with a clarity that resonates far beyond Burkina Faso. If you want to break with these imperialist forces, it's simple. We must denounce the agreements, he urged in January 2025, slamming French President Emmanuel Macron's claim that African leaders should thank Paris for its military presence. Traore's retort that Macron was insulting all Africans electrified the continent, exposing the condescension of former colonial powers and the complicity of African leaders who uphold such arrangements. Traoré has also challenged the narrative of African dependency, where rejecting the idea that the continent needs Western aid or intervention to thrive. We have proof. Tracks have been laid. Soldiers are equipped, he said in July 2024, accusing France, Benin and Ivory Coast of orchestrating destabilization efforts against Burkina Faso. By naming names and presenting evidence, Traoré has forced African leaders to confront their role in perpetuating neo-colonial networks. His accusations against Ivory Coast in particular have strained diplomatic ties but emboldened activists who see Ouattara as a pawn of Western interests. Perhaps most damning is Traoré's critique of African leaders' failure to unite. At the AES summit, he spoke of a continent suffering from the fire of the imperialists and called for a confederation that prioritizes African sovereignty over Western appeasement. This vision directly challenges ECOWAS, which many view as a tool of French and American influence. By forging the AES with Mali and Niger, Traoré has shown that African unity is possible without Western oversight, a prospect that terrifies leaders who rely on external validation to maintain power. The protests supporting Traoré have instilled fear in African leaders for several reasons. First, they highlight a growing Pan-Africanist consciousness that transcends national borders. The fact that Ghanaians, Liberians and others are rallying for a Burkinabe leader suggests that loyalty is shifting from individual governments to a broader vision of African liberation. This is a nightmare scenario for presidents who depend on nationalist rhetoric or ethnic divisions to maintain control. Second, Traoré's popularity exposes the fragility of their own legitimacy. When Liberians risk arrest to protest outside the Ivorian embassy, or when Ghanaians chant Traoré's name while ignoring Akufo-Addo, it sends a clear message. The social contract between African leaders and their people is broken. The arrests in Liberia, in particular, reveal a desperate attempt to suppress this awakening, but such measures only fuel public resentment. As one ex-post warned, the CIA warns that leaders like Captain Ibrahim Traoré could influence African leaders and Africa may become a superpower in under 15 years. This fear of a Traoré-inspired domino effect is palpable among elites. Third, Traoré's defiance of Western powers raises the stakes for African leaders who collaborate with them. His expulsion of French troops and rejection of the CFA franc have inspired calls for similar actions in countries like Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, and Cameroon. Leaders who host Western military bases or sign IMF deals now face increasing scrutiny from their citizens, who see Traoré as proof that another path is possible. The protests, with their anti-imperialist slogans and Russian flags, signal a rejection of the West's grip on Africa, a trend that threatens the political survival of pro-Western regimes. The support for Traoré extends beyond Africa, amplifying his influence and the embarrassment of African leaders. In the African diaspora, particularly in the United States and Europe, activists have organized solidarity rallies, drawing parallels between Traoré's struggle and global fights against imperialism. Social media platforms like X are ablaze with posts hailing Traor'e as a revolutionary hero. One user declared, "Everyone with a black skin on earth must stand with Captain Ibrahim Traor'e of Burkina Faso," reflecting the global resonance of his message. This international dimension underscores why Traorè's leadership is so threatening. Unlike African leaders who caught Western approval at Davos or the UN, Traoré speaks to the grassroots, youth, workers, and the disenfranchised. His alignment with Russia and China, while controversial, is seen as a strategic move to counter Western dominance, not a blind embrace of new masters. "Either we agree to fight for our country or we remain slaves forever," Traoré declared in response to US threats, a statement that has gone viral among activists worldwide. As the dust settles from the April 30th protests, one thing is clear. Captain Ibrahim Traoré has changed the game. His leadership has not only galvanized Burkina Faso, but sparked a pan-Africanist renaissance that is forcing African leaders to confront their own inadequacies. The fear and shame they feel are not just personal, they reflect a deeper crisis of legitimacy in a continent yearning for true independence. For the people, Traoré represents hope, a leader who dares to dream of an Africa free from the shackles of imperialism, where resources serve the many, not the few. For African leaders, he is a mirror reflecting their failures, a reminder that power without purpose is fleeting. As one Burkinabe protester, Haroun Sawadogo, warned, if they want to eliminate Captain Traoré, they should eliminate the people first. This is the heart of Traoré's revolution, a movement rooted in the will of the people, unstoppable by arrests, threats, or coups. The protests of April 30th, 2025 are a wake-up call for Africa. They signal a new era where citizens are no longer content with leaders who bow to foreign powers or prioritize personal gain over public welfare. Traoré's truths about imperialism, unity, and self-reliance are reshaping the continent's political landscape, exposing the cowardice of those who cling to the old order. As Africans from Liberia to Ghana, from Ouagadougou to the diaspora, rally behind this young captain, they are not just supporting a man, they are reclaiming their future. And for African leaders watching from their palaces, the message is clear: adapt or be left behind. As I conclude, brothers and sisters of this great continent, please allow me say this. The thunderous protests of April 30th, 2025 have etched Captain Ibrahim Traoré's name into the annals of African history, not as a mere leader, but as a catalyst for a continent-wide awakening. From the vibrant streets of Ouagadougou to the defiant marches in Monrovia and Accra, Africans have spoken with one voice, rallying behind a young Burkinabe captain who embodies their aspirations for dignity, sovereignty, and self-determination. This unprecedented show of solidarity, spanning borders and oceans, has laid bare a stark reality. The old guard of African leadership is teetering on the edge of obsolescence. To survive and thrive, African leaders must shed their egos, embrace Traoré's revolutionary blueprint, and align with the will of their people. The alternative is a future where they are sidelined by a generation that refuses to accept mediocrity. Traoré's meteoric rise offers a masterclass in leadership rooted in courage, authenticity, and service. His bold moves, expelling foreign troops, nationalizing resources, and forging the alliance of Sahel states, demonstrate that African nations can chart their own destinies without bowing to external pressures. His unapologetic rhetoric, calling out neo-colonialism and its enablers, has struck a chord with a populace weary of leaders who prioritize foreign alliances over domestic progress. The sight of Liberians risking arrest to defend Burkina Faso's sovereignty, or Ghanaians chanting for a foreign leader, is a clarion call. Africans crave leaders who act decisively, speak truthfully, and deliver tangible results. Traoré's Burkina Faso, with its focus on education, healthcare, and food security despite Western sanctions, is proof that such leadership is not a pipe dream, but a viable path forward. African leaders must recognize that the protests are not just about Traoré, they signal a tectonic shift in public consciousness. The youth, who form the majority of Africa's population, are no longer content with empty promises or recycled colonial frameworks like ECOWAS. They demand leaders who reject exploitative agreements, invest in local economies, and foster continental unity. Traorè's AES, a confederation built on mutual respect and shared goals, is a model that leaders must study and adapt. By contrast, those who cling to Western patronage or suppress dissent, as seen in Liberia's arrests, risk alienating their citizens and fueling unrest. The embarrassment of seeing their people march for a foreign leader should be a wake-up call to prioritize accountability over arrogance. To learn from Traoré, leaders must first humble themselves, acknowledging their shortcomings and engaging with their citizens' aspirations. They must dismantle systems that perpetuate dependency, redirect national wealth to the masses, and champion African solutions to African challenges. This requires courage to defy imperialist pressures and wisdom to build inclusive, transparent governance. The alternative, doubling down on ego-driven politics, will only deepen the chasm between rulers and the ruled, paving the way for more protests, uprisings, or even coups. The dawn of a new Africa is here, illuminated by Traoré's vision and the people's resolve. Leaders who embrace this moment, learning from his example, can steer their nations toward prosperity and pride. Those who refuse, blinded by pride, will find themselves relics of a fading era, overtaken by a continent ready to rise as one.
Our letter. I wrote the letter. They advised that they didn't receive it. It's okay. Change doesn't start in one day. Change doesn't start in one day. We will accept the order. What? You want the exact order of the police? The police are advising that, first of all, are no law. First of all, the fact that they said that we're raising concern, that's baseless. I don't accept that under the law. The second attempt that the police have the power to impose is the fact of the permit. Because the police officer right here, they're here, and you can show it to them. They're right here. If this permit was not given to us, if I had a permit, under no circumstances, any tradition, any penal code, under the constitution of Liberia, you can tell me that it's raising concern. Because I know within myself, we're not raising any concern. And under our freedom movement, we're not obstructing anyone. There were free flow of traffic.
News stories, and as always, let's go ahead and get right into today's video. So on my other channel, Seconds of Horror, a couple days ago, I had uploaded this video here where an individual in California, he noticed that as it was raining and it was collecting next to him, he noticed that the rain was blue. But now it seems like we have another individual over in Texas who said when it was raining and as the rain was collecting, this is what he captured.
Hey, we're camping in this beautiful state park in Texas, and it's been raining, and the water that's coming out of the sky is blue. And it's not this tarp, because it's happening on this tarp too. Look at that. This is crazy. Are they chemtrailing us in Texas?
That video is from Commercial Chris on TikTok. Now, there are some people leaving comments like maybe it's planes may be dumping out toilet water, but planes do not deliberately dump out toilet water. Could there be accidents? Could there be leaks? Yes. But those that are familiar with this, they are saying that that's called blue ice, and it looks nothing like this. Another takeaway is that it's clearly raining in his video. So now we have people that are saying that this is cloud seeding. This is proof of cloud seeding. But if you remember in my previous video I uploaded a couple days ago, I was talking about a news article where over in the United Kingdom, they have a atmospheric balloon system called Satan, Project Satan, where they are spraying things in the skies. They are seeding the clouds and so forth. And in their words, they're doing this to dim the sun for the climate. Now, I said in that video, do not be fooled. This is not something that's limited to just the UK. They're doing this all over the world, especially in the United States. And I also had shown in that video, there are balloons that are flying across the United States that people are finding on their flight systems, their flight radar systems. Just thinking about the color blue reminds me of the Maui fires, and remember how much of an important topic the color blue was during those fires, and people talking about the frequency of the color blue being 6.66. And now we have blue rain in certain locations, and the United Kingdom has an atmospheric balloon system called Satan, which again is not just limited to the United Kingdom. Project Satan and all these other cloud seeding techniques, chemtrails, and so forth, it's not just about dimming the sun. It's about ruining crops, farmland. It's about destroying the bees, destroying useful insects, and things like that. It's about complete control at the end of the day. I really hope he does, or anybody that experiences this blue rain, they collect this rain and get it tested, because just like with the fog, people were testing the fog and it was hitting back, that there was Serratia marcescens within the fog. I also find it very interesting that there was all these news articles coming out very recently around the same time as this blue rain, that scientists, they discovered this new color. There was a group of people and they had something done to their eyes, and this group of people, they saw this color they described very similar to this rain here, and they call it Olo. The way they described Olo was just teal, and again, very similar to this rain here. So I just find it very, very interesting. All those news articles were coming out about this new color, and now people are seeing this teal color rain. These very bizarre and strange news stories always have a much deeper meaning than what they're trying to present to us. In this next segment, people kept saying about a day ago, they noticed something kept blocking the moon about 7 times. And people are saying also there were no clouds in sight.
Last night, something massive passed in front of the moon and blocked its view for several minutes, confirmed by witnesses across the US, London, and even Ghana. Reddit user VampireSuck13, a Marine in Northern California, describes seeing the moon appear, vanish, reappear, and repeat this strange pattern 7 times, before it vanished completely well before its expected set time. The sky was clear, no clouds or fires, yet the moon kept disappearing like something enormous was silently moving across it. He captured the whole thing on video, and now people worldwide are saying they saw the same event. So the question is, what just passed between us and the moon?
What's in front of it now? What the is going on? I can't explain. I've never seen anything like this.
So yeah, multiple people are leaving comments that they witnessed the same thing a couple days ago. They are also saying there was no clouds in the sky, because you can easily see when the moon is being blocked out by a cloud. But yeah, people are saying that there were absolutely no clouds blocking out the moon, yet something was blocking out the moon. You also have people leaving comments like, hey, I was in Texas and I thought I was at a bad angle because I saw the same obstruction, had to come back outside to recheck because I second guessed myself. This person here said London, Ontario, the same. This person said, I noticed that too. I was driving on the 5 freeway in Anaheim and I look up, no moon. Then suddenly a few minutes later, there it was. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and go over all the comments, but it seems like, and there's a lot of comments here of people, they are in complete agreement in multiple different locations, all saying they witnessed the same thing, and nobody's saying that it was cloudy or they saw any clouds. No, just that the moon was either disappearing or something was blocking the moon. And this video is from Viral News Watch on TikTok. This reminds me of what people had seen on April 27th. They were watching live feed of the sun, and all of a sudden, this massive object blocks out parts of the sun. There were absolutely no solar eclipses scheduled for April or April 27th. The last one was in March, and the next one will be in September. So what was this object blocking the sun? Well, NASA came out after this happened a couple days later. They went to the media and said they were taken by surprise that a solar eclipse had occurred. And this is only a solar eclipse you can witness from space. They said they had absolutely no idea this was going to happen. It was just random. And again, you can only see it from space. Now you know how I feel about NASA, that NASA lies and they don't tell us the truth. So I feel like this is a cover story for something else that happened. I just find it very interesting that we had this object block out parts of the sun, and then a couple days later, people are reporting that there was an object that had blocked out the moon and there were no clouds in the skies. Then one day after this massive object blocked out parts of the sun, Europe had one of its worst power outages ever. So if you believe that this was a solar eclipse, it all boils down to, do you trust NASA or do you not trust NASA? Me, I do not trust NASA. This video was given to Conscious Juice a couple days ago, and he uploaded this video footage. And as you can see, it looks like there is a second object next to the moon, and people are leaving comments, well, maybe this is what blocked out the sun. This is what blocked out the moon. He said the individual that gave him that video footage was located in California, which is interesting because a lot of the comments from people saying they saw something block out the moon, they were from people located in California.
Are y'all seeing this? That's the moon. And the other moon. I thought that was my astigmatism. Oh, what the hell?
Light is off. I thought maybe, just maybe,
it was because of the light in the background, but no, you can still see it. 2 moons, they said, right? TikTok? Huh.
Then this individual here on TikTok, JR369, he captured this mile-long beam of light coming out of the Cheshire Moon.
Okay, well, I don't know if you guys can see this, but there appears to be some sort of a light that's coming from the moon. And apparently there's an eclipse going on. Where are you? There you go. It's not coming in very well. Anyways, you see the light on the left, on the upper left side of it, and it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. This is some crazy shit.
This individual here, Lillian Rosario 3, she sees the moon smiling, a Cheshire moon. She goes back out later that night to see if she can see it better, and it completely disappeared. There was no moon. And people are asking her, well, were there any clouds out at night or that night? And she said no. So she captured on camera what other people have been noticing and talking about. So yeah, more and more people are noticing oddities about the moon, oddities about the sun. And remember, I was making videos about how the moon was appearing on the wrong side of the skies at certain hours when it should be on the other side of the skies.
I'm a sky watcher. I watch the sky constantly, all the time. And I'm sitting on my front porch because I can't sleep. I'm sleeping like, well, the first 2 nights this started, really didn't sleep at all. The third night I slept 2 hours. Last night I got 4 hours of sleep. That was a lot for me. And I can't eat. Like, I'm eating one time a day, making myself eat, but I'm so sick at my stomach, I can't eat. So, but I guess I need to fast, right? Okay. Anyway, okay. I want to try to explain this the best I can. You can't see in the dark. If I turn my porch light on, my dogs start barking and they'll wake everybody up. Okay. I'm on my front porch. I'm just going to do directions. Y'all just trust me. Since I've lived here, we didn't move. We moved back to my hometown in August. And since we've lived here, the moon has always went all night because I'm a night owl. I watch it, trust me. And it goes around this house that way. Every night. It goes that way. I don't know if that's east-west. I don't know. But it goes that way. Okay. Tonight, I come out here and it was about 10 to 11. And I've been sitting out here watching, looking at the stars and all that good stuff. The moon's over here by 11 o'clock. The moon, okay, it usually comes over here. The moon is on this side, a quarter moon on this side, and is already almost invisible it's already went down in like 35 minutes. It was right here. It was like right here. And it's already moved down in 35 minutes. What the? Does the moon just change directions with each zodiac? What's going on? I've been watching the sky for 5 years. The moon's always been the same spot. Anyway, y'all let me know. I mean, I might be wrong. I might be totally off, but I know what I know, right? Okay, I love y'all.
And we can't take off the table the fact they do have a solar simulator, a lunar simulator, a fake sun, a fake moon. We can never take that off the table. But in any case, thank you.
Kofi, follow me.